We're now moving on to section 4 of the Rime of the Ancient Mariner, a very important transition section in the 7-part series. But before I step into it, I'd like to do a little think with the Ernest Hemingway's, one of his final significant novels from which he won the Pulitzer Prize. Most thought Hemingway had come to the end of his creative life. But in the early 50s, he did a very important novel, The Old Man and the Sea. And there's obvious overlap between The Old Man and the Sea and the Rime of the Ancient Mariner. Both deal with ancient, so what Coleridge is getting at. There's deep truths that we tap into in the mother lode of the ancients, and particularly the deeper experience which is known through myth and through story and through narrative. The Old Man and the Sea is again the old man who has traveled far and wide, and the young boy, quite different than the wedding guest in the Rime of the Ancient Mariner, but they both deal with the notion of traveling across the waters in a craft and facing challenges, questionable decisions made. The point to get at in The Old Man and the Sea, which is very significant, is the old man, or Santiago, in The Old Man of the Sea, he's reached a point where, in fact, he seems to be a failure. He's gone out to fish many times. He just hasn't caught the fish that is needed to feed them in this Cuban area. And so he heads out, he goes beyond where the rest of the fishermen are, far beyond the company and the community of many from the little village. He heads out and out further. And in the process, he ends up catching a huge marlin. The marlin is much bigger than the craft that Santiago rows in and is trying to catch the fish. In one sense, the marlin represents meaning, purpose. It's the albatross in many ways for Santiago. He's searching for something that is going to give him a sense of direction, a sense of finding purpose, of finding direction in his ailing years. Many of the things he'd done with young, that's over. Accomplishments in the past are transient. They don't hold as one moves into the future. And so he catches this marlin, which embodies that which is good, that which is a challenge, that which is meaningful, that which is idealistic, that which gives direction, like the albatross. Immense struggle to finally bring in the marlin, but in the finding and the catching of the marlin as he tows it beside the boat heading back to the broader community, the marlin has pulled him way beyond the community. As he mentions later, I have gone too far. I've stepped outside of the accountability, the responsibility of the people. And yes, the ideal has been caught. There's been a sense of the task accomplished, the goal reached, but in the catching of the marlin, the catching of the ideal, what comes alongside of the ship is increasing. So sharks after sharks after sharks. An interesting study of what Hemingway is trying to get at is that often in the quest to find the best, the noblest, the true, the good, the beautiful, if one is not careful in the catching or the finding of that, one encounters many, many sharks. And that can be the sharks of liberalism, as one is trying to do, or find the good, the true, and beautiful, or reactionary conservatism. Sharks begin to come round and round the ideal. It's one thing to ignore the ideal and just want to give in to a crude realism, but people who are trying to find what's best and live it personally, interpersonally, in the public realm, the social realm, the community realm, inevitably they are going to use people. People are going to be in both sides of this. They're going to be sharks that will begin to eat up, consume, grab the flesh with the teeth of their own ideologies. Now, as the old man, Santiago, finally finds his way back to shore, what of course has happened, the ideal, the marlin, has been consumed by a multiplicity of sharks. So he returns back to the shore, but all that's left is the head of the marlin and the bones that round and round, because the sharks have essentially consumed the caught marlin of the ideal. And so, what Hemingway is getting at, beyond the literal, obviously, there's the allegorical read of the old man at the sea. And one has to be very wary in the search for the marlin of the ideal, that in fact the many sharks that will come on the left, right, politically, or in many other ways, that they will consume the ideal. Now, Santiago returns home an old, sadder but a wiser man, as in the rhyme of the Ancient Mariner, and the young boy finally finds him, and so ends this short novella of sorts. So a lot of overlap between the rhyme of the Ancient Mariner. Section 4 in the rhyme in the Ancient Mariner starts, I fear the Ancient Mariner, I fear thy skinny band, I fear those thee and thy glittering eye. So the wedding guest, he's paralyzed by fear. The Ancient Mariner is telling the story. He's calling the young man, the wedding guest, in fact, to face into the more demanding challenges of life, to go after the marlin, as it were. But the wedding guest fears. He's more committed to amusements, diversions, and in terms of taking the deeper journey, it's like, give me my predictability, give me my security, but I fear what you're saying. And so fear itself can paralyze a person if they're not careful. Fear of taking the risk to move on to deeper levels, more meaningful levels of reality, i.e., going after the marlin in that sense. If we stay in the sheltered, protective little cove of life, a person is never going to venture forth into the big waters of time itself. Very, very similar to what Tolkien was getting at in The Hobbit. One could stay in the Shire, where one is insulated and protected and secure and predictable, but it's when getting out of the shires that the big challenges of life are faced and a person matures, they're formed and shaped. So this wedding guest fears where the mariner is taking him. And so that you get this, but the mariner encourages the wedding guest, in fact, to overcome the fears, because he says, yes, I survived the challenge, what I was into. Interesting, in stanza 3, he says, alone, alone, all alone, alone on the wide, wide sea, and Christ would take no pity on my soul in agony. You get this sense of the mariner in the midst of the difficulties, the depression, the darkness, the impotence, lacking the ability to navigate in any way. There's the sense of, where is the transcendent? Where is God? Where is Christ in this? Well, the mariner feels absent, desertion, in that sense, the eclipse of God. We can find this in section 3 as well, where he talking about asking for gramercy or great mercy. But the two on the boat, the wraiths, as it were, they just smile and say, really, you don't believe that. This is a fairy tale. This is a Sunday school way of, you think some divine being is going to come. The decisions you've made, live with the consequences. But there is not going to be no intervention, no eminence of the divine. So you get this cynicism, this skepticism, this curling of the lip and crying out for mercy. But the two on the ship, the wraiths, mock the very notion. Further on, you get, the mariner says, and straight the sun was flecked with bars. Heaven's mother, send us grace. Again, you get the mariner sending for Mary, Queen of Heaven, for grace. And again, in section 3, you have these people who are cynical, skepticals, and skeptics in many ways like the sharks that you get in the rhyme of the Ancient Mariner, out to destroy the longing for meaning, arguing in one sense, this is just a naive, a childish understanding of things. Be realistic. You've made a decision, you've killed the albatross, no one's going to come and rescue. There is no community, all the sailors have died, you're absolutely on your own. And this very much sums up the section, as I said, alone, alone, all alone, alone on the wide, wide sea, and Christ would take no pity on my soul in agony. So you get the sense the mariner in section 4, the first part of it anyway, is in a very dire strait. Alone, absolutely isolated, the sense of the friends who he thought was on his side on the ship, they've all died metaphorically. They once trusted the mariner. The decision he has made has led to distrust. Death means separation, isolation from those that seemingly were with the mariner on the trip. Again, he goes on, I looked to heaven and tried to pray. Whatever o'er a prey had gushed, a wicked whisper came and made my heart as dry as dust. So here in this next section of 4, the mariner tries to pray, but it leads nowhere. It's a dead end. And so the notion that he goes ever deeper and deeper into despair, isolation, he is alone, totally alone. Those, as I mentioned, who he thought were with him on the journey have died. They're not with him anymore. And he looks at them, those who he was once knit together with. They seem to be on the same boat, traveling across the water before the albatross was killed. But they are dead, and he looks at their souls, as it were, the eyes of their soul, the throat of their soul. They're lying there, and there is no life to them. So section 4 continues the journey both at a transcendent level, the relationship of God to the mariner, at a horizontal level as well, in terms of isolation, a double isolation, and then nature itself. So it's a triple theme that Coleridge is working at in the Rime of the Ancient Mariner. When the albatross is killed, it affects 3 levels, actually 4 levels. The transcendent, the relationship of God. God is absent, eclipsed, not there. The horizontal, which occurs between friendships on the journey, that has broken down. Relationship to nature. Nature has turned negative. It's become tragic. It's become an enemy to the mariner. And then the mariner himself at the 4th level, he himself has become isolated, alone, and there seems to be no way out of the prison of his own ego, the prison that he has created because of certain choices. What is interesting, though, as you come to the end of section 4, and this is where the turn begins in the mariner, he notices these snakes, these slimy snakes. They seem to be the only thing in which there is movement, the only thing that attracts. There's a glittering, there's a beauty, there's a movement to it, there's a color to it, a shimmering color. Now, of course, when we think of snakes, we go back to the Eden story, and snakes are seen metaphorically as that which can tempt, that which can lure, and that which leads a person away from their true being, their true self. And so it's something one would think of the mariner. You've already made decisions. You've killed an albatross. Now you're going to be attracted to snakes. In fact, you're going further and further down a deep, a dark, a destructive path. But what is fascinating in the last 2 stanzas of section 4, which begins the turn of the Ancient Mariner, which actually one could be seen in some ways as a beginning of something like restorative justice. It's oh, happy living things, he says. Now, why would you call snakes, oh, happy living things? I no tongue their beauty might declare. A spring of love, a love gushed from my heart, and I blessed them unaware. So here you have the mariner in despair, seemingly at a point in which no good can come, no trust, no hope, no vision for the future. And yet deep, deep down, it says, a spring of love gushed from my heart. So where was that deeper parts of him that he begins to bless what seems to be the enemy, that which could make things worse? And so love itself becomes a key element. So merely praying and asking God to come, or the Queen of Heaven, all those things, without love, without concern for the other, without a desire to heal where there has been hurt, all these religious ceremonies and symbols are pointless where there is not character formation, turning to the enemy, turning to the opposition, and praying for them out of trying to overcome the opposition, the polarization, quite fit actually for our day of culture wars and polarization, in which the mariner, in fact, sees the enemy, the opposite, the danger, but rather than turning against, caricaturing, it says, a spring of love gushed from my heart, and I blessed them unaware. Sure, my kind saint took pity on me. So here you have Coleridge drawing from religious ideas again. The saint is one who comes to him, the communion of the saints. Though dead, the saints still live, so they come to assist the mariner on this journey. And I bless them unaware. So we can see in this penultimate stanza in section 4 that blessing people, even unaware at a subconscious and unconscious level, not a conscious level, there is a deep part that is yet to be evoked, yet to be called forth, and is called forth in the mariner. And this begins his turn out of depression, the relationship between what seems to be the isolation, God, the mariner, nature, humans, friendships, humans on the ship, and then his own deeper darkness. But deeper than the darkness is the light, and that, in fact, which begins to emerge in the Ancient Mariner. And the final stanza, that self-same moment I could pray. Now, prayer separated from love and loving the other, loving the enemy, is itself an opiate, a form of escapism. But when prayer, in fact, is linked to care for the other, to overcoming polarization, to dealing with that which seems to be the enemy and not turning antagonistically towards them, then prayer becomes meaningful. And this is what Coleridge is getting at in the final few stanzas. All these religious symbols, myths, liturgy, when it's not forming and shaping the soul, the imagination towards the good, the true, and the beautiful, can itself become a diversion. And then it ends with, the self-same moment I could pray, and from my neck is so free, the albatross fell off and sank like lead into the sea. So the very thing that was weighing him down disappears. And so more important than the albatross, which is guiding, which can be harmed and hurt on the journey, is the ability to love the other. And particularly, in this case, the snakes, which seems to be the very thing that can threaten and destroy and pull the mariner further into the depths of darkness and the sub and the unconscious. But in learning to care for the other, in fact, the albatross falls off the back. And this then leads us to section number 5. Just as in the Old Man and the Sea, the old man had to deal with the sharks, and so the mariner had to deal with his own sharks. And finally, you get the turn now, just as in the Ancient Mariner back. The ending of the Old Man and the Sea is quite different from the rhyme of the Ancient Mariner, and we'll discuss this a little bit next week when we get into section 5 and then 6 and 7, and how what Hemingway is doing, what Coleridge is doing, and we could also look at Moby Dick in that regards as well, how they're unpacking the big struggles, issues in life, and how a person can lose their way and enter into the realm and the sea of sharks, and what that does even to the best of ideals. Coleridge is moving towards the noblest of ideals, and how one does that. Hemingway is struggling with some of those issues, quite a different answer to the issue. And then Moby Dick is in many ways grappling with the same issue as well. So next week we move into 5 and look at where the Ancient Mariner is turning towards the light, towards life again, as a result of learning to love the other, the enemy, the opposition, the snake in that sense. And what does that look like in anyone's life as they have to grapple with that?